The broken wanderer. The asteroid storm had been raging for 3 days when Sarah Chen first saw the figure collapsed outside her workshop. Through the reinforced viewport of Haven's End mining station, she watched debris streak past like angry meteors, each impact shaking the ancient structure. Most sensible beings would have found shelter hours ago, but this creature lay motionless in the storm's fury. Sarah grabbed her emergency suit and cycled through the airlock. The figure was larger than she'd expected, easily 8 feet tall, with 6 limbs arranged in perfect symmetry. Cotonous plates covered what she assumed was its torso, though several were cracked and leaking a pale blue fluid. The creature's breathing was shallow, each exhale visible in the thin atmosphere. As Sarah knelt beside the alien, compound eyes suddenly snapped open, reflecting the station's emergency lights like fractured diamonds. The being tried to scramble backward, mandibles clicking in what she recognized as distress. "Easy there," Sarah said, keeping her voice calm. "You're hurt, let me help." The alien's voice came through a translation device clipped to its damaged chest plate, the words stilted and formal. "Forgive this one's intrusion, human mechanic. This one seeks only to pass through your territory safely." Sarah had been running the only repair shop on Haven's End for 12 years, and she'd seen plenty of desperate travelers. But something about this alien's polite desperation struck her differently. Most species that passed through treated humans as either useful tools or necessary obstacles. This one spoke with genuine respect. "What's your name?" she asked, helping the alien to its feet. "This one is called Zixtala of the Void Builders, though such titles hold no meaning now." The alien's lower limbs trembled with exhaustion. "This one apologizes for disturbing your work, period." Sarah had heard of the Void Builders. Their species was legendary for constructing ships that could travel between dimensions. Technology so advanced that even the Galactic Council treated them as near-mythical beings. Yet here was one of them, injured and alone on the galaxy's most forgotten station. "When did you last eat?" Sarah asked, noticing how the alien's movements were becoming increasingly unsteady. Zixtala's head lowered in what she interpreted as shame. "This one has not consumed nutrients in 6 standard cycles. This one's credits were expended on fuel to reach this system. 6 days without food." Sarah had seen humans go longer, but she had no idea about Void Builder physiology. Aliens' breathing was becoming more labored, and those compound eyes were losing their brightness. "Come on," Sarah said, gesturing toward her workshop. "Let's get you inside." Zixtala hesitated at the threshold. "This one cannot offer payment for such kindness." "Did I ask for payment?" Sarah replied, sealing the airlock behind them. The workshop was cramped but warm, filled with the familiar smells of lubricants and heated metal. Sarah had built this place herself after the mining company abandoned Haven's End, creating a haven for travelers who needed repairs far from civilization. She cleared debris from her largest workbench and helped Zixtala settle onto it. "Let me take a look at that life support system," she said, examining the alien's damaged chest plate. As Sarah worked, Zixtala began to speak. His story emerged in fragments, translated through the failing device on his chest. He had been one of the youngest ship designers in Void Builder history, creating vessels that pushed the boundaries of known science. But when the Hegemony War erupted across 3 sectors, his people had demanded he weaponize his designs. This one refused, Zixtala explained, his voice growing stronger as Sarah repaired his life support. "The ships this one creates are meant to explore, to build connections between worlds. To turn them into instruments of destruction would be to betray their very purpose. So they exiled you, Sarah said, understanding dawning. Worse, they declared this one's bloodline ended, erased all records of this one's contributions. In void. Build a society, to be forgotten is to never have existed at all. Sarah paused in her work. She'd heard of alien honor codes before, but the cruelty of such complete erasure struck her as particularly heartless. How long have you been wondering? 17 standard years, Zixtaler replied. This one takes dangerous salvage jobs. Repairs failing systems on ships others won't touch. It is adequate survival, though barely. 17 years of exile for refusing to build weapons. Sarah thought of her own past, of the military contracts she'd turned down because they felt wrong, the comfortable positions she'd abandoned to run this forgotten workshop. She understood the weight of moral choices. I've got some protein synthesizer stock in the back, she said, finishing the life support repairs. It's not fancy, but it's nutritious. Zixtaler's compound eyes widened. This one cannot accept such generosity without offering service in return. Sarah looked around her cluttered workshop, at the pile of repair jobs that had been accumulating. Since her last assistant left for better opportunities closer to civilization. Most of the work was routine, but some required the kind of heavy lifting that her aging human body struggled with. Actually, I could use some help around here, she said. Nothing too complicated, just moving parts and holding tools while I work. Interested? This one would be honored to assist, Zixtaler said. And for the first time, Sarah heard something like hope in the translated voice as weeks passed. Sarah discovered that Zixtaler was far more than just another set of hands. The alien's knowledge of ship systems was encyclopedic, and his understanding of quantum mechanics made her own engineering degree seem elementary. More importantly, he worked with a precision and care that spoke of genuine craftsmanship. Word spread through the outer systems about the human-alien repair team on Haven's End. Ships that had been running on failing systems for months made the journey to Sarah's workshop, drawn by reports of impossible repairs and reasonable prices. How do you do it? Asked Captain Torres, a grizzled freight hauler whose ship Sarah and Zixtaler had just brought back from the brink of total failure. That quantum drive should have been scrap metal, but now it's running better than when I bought it new. Sarah glanced at Zixtaler, who was carefully adjusting the final calibrations. Different perspectives, she said simply. Sometimes you need fresh eyes to see old problems. But it was more than that, and Sarah knew it. Working with Zixtaler had taught her that human ingenuity wasn't about superior intelligence or technology. It was about approaching problems without preconceptions, about finding solutions that others dismissed as impossible. One evening, as they worked on a particularly challenging repair, Zixtaler spoke about something that had been troubling him. This one does not understand human logic, he said, his mandibles clicking thoughtfully. Sarah Mechanic shows kindness to a being who can offer nothing of equal value in return. This contradicts all rational behavior patterns. Sarah smiled, remembering similar conversations with other aliens over the years. Maybe that's what makes us human, she said. We don't always do what makes rational sense. Sometimes we do what feels right. Feelings are inefficient, Zixtaler observed, though his tone suggested genuine curiosity rather than criticism. Maybe, Sarah replied, adjusting a plasma coupling with practiced ease. But feelings are also what made me open my door during an asteroid storm to help a stranger. Feelings are what made me offer you work instead of just repairs. Sometimes, Inefficiency creates the most valuable outcomes. Zixthaler was quiet for a long moment, his compound eyes reflecting the workshop's soft lighting. In Void Builder philosophy, he said finally, there is a concept called resonant engineering. It describes how the most elegant solutions often come from unexpected harmonies between different systems. Sounds familiar, Sarah said, thinking about their collaboration. This one is beginning to understand, Zixthaler continued, that perhaps humans practice resonant engineering with other beings, not just with machines. As the days grew longer and more ships found their way to Haven's End, Sarah began to notice changes in her alien partner. Zixthaler stood straighter, spoke with more confidence, and his compound eyes had regained their brilliant luminescence. The broken wanderer she'd found in the asteroid storm was becoming something else entirely, but Sarah sensed that their story was just beginning. In the distance, long-range sensors had detected something that would soon test everything they had built together, something that would prove whether the bond between a human mechanic and an exiled alien could withstand the greatest challenge either had ever faced. Asterisk. The miracle of understanding, the emergency beacon pierced through Haven's End's communication array at 0347 station time, jolting Sarah from her sleep. The message was fragmented, desperate, transmitted on multiple alien frequencies simultaneously. Through the static, one word came through clearly in a dozen languages: help. Sarah found Zixthaler already in the workshop, his 6 limbs moving in precise patterns as he analyzed the incoming data streams. The glow from his compound eyes cast dancing shadows on the walls. Refugee ship, he reported without looking up from the sensor displays. Configuration suggests a deep space transport, possibly converted from a mining vessel. Current trajectory will bring them to Haven's End in approximately 4 hours. How many aboard? Sarah asked, pulling up the long-range scanners. Biosignatures indicate approximately 3,000 beings. Multiple species, though sensors cannot determine specifics at this distance. Zixthaler's mandibles clicked rapidly. A sign Sarah had learned indicated intense concentration. Sarah mechanic. This one detects significant structural damage, multiple hull breaches, failing life support systems, primary engines operating at 17% capacity. Sarah felt her heart sink. Haven's End was a mining station, not a refugee center. They had basic medical facilities for maybe 50 beings, food stores for perhaps twice that many. 3,000 refugees would overwhelm their resources within hours. Can they make it to the Centauri colonies? She asked, knowing even as she spoke that the answer would be no. Negative. Current damage assessment suggests complete system failure within 6 hours. They will not survive the journey. The next transmission came through clearer, and Sarah recognized the universal distress protocols. The voice speaking was mechanical, probably an AI system, but the desperation was unmistakably organic in origin. Haven's End Station. This is Refugee Transport Sanctuary's dream. We carry survivors from the Nexus system evacuation. Critical systems failing. We have children aboard. Please, if anyone can hear this, we need immediate assistance. Sarah closed her eyes. The Nexus system evacuation had been all over the Galactic news 3 weeks ago. A stellar collapse had given the inhabitants barely enough time to flee, and most had scattered across a dozen different refugee ships. Apparently, one of those ships had been limping through space ever since, searching for a port that would take them. We have to help them, Sarah said, though she had no idea how. Zixthaler turned all 6 of his compound eyes toward her. This One agrees, but conventional repair methods will be insufficient. The damage described exceeds the capacity of any standard repair facility, much less a converted mining workshop. Sarah began pacing, her mind racing through possibilities. What if we brought them into the station's main hangar? It's not designed for it, but maybe we could create a temporary dock. The hangar's structural integrity could not support a vessel of that size, Zixthala replied. Additionally, the environmental systems would fail within hours of attempting to accommodate 3,000 additional life forms. Then what? Sarah demanded, frustration bleeding into her voice. Do we just watch them die? Zixthala was quiet. For a long moment, his chitinous plates, shifting in what she had learned was his version of deep thought. This one has been considering an alternative approach, he said finally. But it would require techniques that this one's people have forbidden. What kind of techniques? Dimensional phase engineering. Instead of bringing their ship to the station, this one could theoretically create a spatial fold that would allow us to extend the station's life support systems directly to their vessel. It would create a temporary bubble of shared atmosphere and gravity between the two structures. Sarah stared at him. Is that even possible? Void builders perfected such techniques centuries ago, but they are considered too dangerous for practical application. The energy requirements are enormous, and any miscalculation could destroy both vessels. But you know how to do it. Zixthala's compound eyes dimmed slightly. This one designed several theoretical applications before the exile. But theory and practice are very different things. They're a mechanic, and this one would need components that do not exist on Haven's End. Sarah felt the familiar spark of inspiration that had guided her through countless impossible repairs. What kind of components? For the next hour, Zixthala explained the theoretical framework while Sarah scoured the station's inventory systems. The dimensional phase generator required exotic materials and precise quantum alignments that should have been impossible to achieve with mining station equipment. We're missing about 60% of what we need, Sarah said, reviewing her notes. But what if we improvise? I've got quantum capacitors from the old mining drills, and there's a dimensional stabilizer in the cargo bay from that hegemony cruiser we repaired last month. Those components are not designed for phase engineering, Zixthala protested. The probability of catastrophic failure approaches 97%, and the probability of those refugees surviving without our help. 0%, Zixthala admitted. Sarah nodded grimly. Then 97% looks pretty good to me. They had less than 3 hours. Sarah had never worked so intensely in her life, and she suspected Zixthala hadn't either since his exile began. The alien's knowledge of theoretical engineering, combined with her practical experience in making impossible repairs, created a synergy neither had expected. The quantum capacitors need to be aligned to 17 decimal places, Zixthala explained as they worked. Any variance will cause the phase field to collapse. I can't measure to 17 decimal places with these tools, Sarah replied, sweat beating on her forehead as she adjusted the delicate components. This one can sense the resonance frequencies directly, Zixthala said. Guide this one's hands, and this one will guide yours. What followed was the strangest dance Sarah had ever experienced. She placed her hands over Zixthala's manipulator limbs, feeling the minute adjustments he made while providing the steady pressure and leverage his more delicate appendages couldn't achieve. It was as if they had become a single, hybrid entity, human intuition merged with alien precision. Incoming transmission, the station's AI announced. Refugee vessel sanctuaries Dream requesting immediate docking clearance. Life support failing. Rapidly. Tell them to hold position at 2,000 kilometers, Sarah called out, not taking her eyes off the phase generator. We're preparing emergency assistance. The final connections were the most dangerous. Sarah had to route power from the station's main reactor through improvised conduits while Zixtala synchronized the quantum fields. One mistake would not only kill the refugees, but probably vaporize Haven's End as well. Ceramechanic, Zix said as they made the final adjustments. This one must express gratitude for the opportunity to use these skills for their intended purpose once more. Save the gratitude until we know it works, Sarah replied, though she smiled as she said it. Activating phase field in 3.2.1. The workshop filled with an eerie blue-green glow as reality bent around them. Sarah felt a moment of vertigo as the dimensional fold took effect, and then suddenly she could see through the walls of Haven's End directly into the refugee ship's main corridor. It's working, she breathed. The next several hours were a blur of controlled chaos. 3,000 beings from a dozen different species flowed through the dimensional bridge Sarah and Zixtala had created. The station's resources were stretched beyond all reasonable limits, but somehow they held. Emergency shelters were erected in every available space. Food synthesizers ran at maximum capacity, and medical stations treated injuries from species Sarah had never seen before. But it wasn't just the technology that made the miracle possible. Sarah watched as human settlers from the mining colony shared their personal rations with exhausted refugee children. She saw Zixtala patiently explaining quantum mechanics to a group of young beings whose species had never encountered void builder technology before. She witnessed a dozen acts of kindness between strangers who had never met and might never meet again. Asterisk. The phase field is stable, Zixtala reported as they monitored the situation from the workshop. Sanctuaries, dreams, systems are regenerating within the shared environment bubble. They will be able to continue their journey within 12 hours. Sarah nodded, exhaustion finally beginning to catch up with her. Good. I wasn't sure we could maintain power long enough. This one was not referring only to the ship's systems, Zixtala said quietly. Observe. Sarah looked through the dimensional viewing portal and saw what he meant. The refugees weren't just resting and recovering. They were working alongside Haven's End's residents, sharing their own knowledge and skills. A group of crystalline beings were helping to upgrade the station's communication array using techniques Sarah had never seen. Several mammalian species were assisting in the medical bay, their natural healing abilities complementing the station's limited equipment. They're not just taking help, Sarah realized. They're giving it back. Resonant engineering, Zixtala observed. Different systems, creating unexpected harmonies. As the refugee ship prepared to depart, its captain, a tall being with flowing tentacle-like appendages, approached Sarah and Zixtala in the workshop. We cannot adequately express our gratitude, the captain said through her translator. You saved 3,000 lives today with technology and courage we did not believe possible. We all saved each other, Sarah replied. That's what people do. The captain's tentacles waved in what Sarah interpreted as amusement. Perhaps, but the galaxy has taken notice. Word of what happened here is already spreading through the refugee networks. Other stations are requesting technical assistance for similar emergencies. The Galactic Engineering Council has classified your dimensional phase technique as a breakthrough innovation. Sarah glanced at Zixtala, who had become very still. What does that mean exactly? It means, the captain continued, that Haven's End has become much more than a forgotten mining station. It has become a symbol of what different species can accomplish when they work together. After the refugees departed, Sarah and Zixella sat in their workshop, surrounded by the improvised equipment that had made the miracle possible. The blue-green glow of the dimensional field had faded, but something else had taken its place. A sense of purpose neither had felt in years. "This one has received a communication," Zixella said, his compound eyes brighter than Sarah had ever seen them. "The Galactic Engineering Council wishes to establish the first interspecies technical institute. They have requested that this one serve as the chief theoretical instructor." Sarah felt a pang of loss. After months of working together, the thought of Zixella leaving felt like losing a limb. "That's amazing," she said, forcing enthusiasm into her voice. "You deserve the recognition." "This one has accepted the position," Zixella continued, "with one condition. The institute must be established here, on Haven's End, with Sarah Mechanic serving as chief practical instructor." Sarah's eyes widened. They agreed to that. They agreed to much more. Haven's End will be transformed into the galaxy's premier facility for emergency engineering and interspecies technical cooperation. This one's exile has been formally rescinded, and this one's bloodline has been restored to the Void Builder records. "That's wonderful," Sarah said, meaning it completely. "You're going home." Zixella's mandibles clicked in the pattern she had learned indicated gentle amusement. "This one is home," Sarah Mechanic. "This one learned from observing human behavior that home is not always the place where one was created. Sometimes home is the place where one's true purpose is discovered." As they began planning the transformation of Haven's End from Forgotten Outpost to Galactic Institute, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. A broken alien asking for help during an asteroid storm had somehow become the foundation for something that would benefit the entire galaxy. "You know," she said, watching the stars through the workshop's viewport, "I think humans and void builders might have more in common than either of our species realized." "How so?" "We both believe that the most beautiful engineering comes from building connections rather than barriers." Zixella's compound eyes glowed with what Sarah had learned was his equivalent of a smile. "Resonant engineering," he agreed. "The most elegant solutions often come from the most unexpected harmonies." Outside Haven's End, the cosmos stretched infinite and full of possibility. Inside the workshop, two beings from different worlds planned a future where such differences would become strengths, where the miracle of understanding could bridge any gap the universe might create. The last mechanic's gift had become the first teacher's promise that no being, regardless of species or circumstance, would ever have to face the darkness of space alone. Asterisk.